Hello and welcome to AC Fast Thinking. My name is Dr. David Bray, inaugural director of the Atlantic Council's GeoTech Center. In a peer-reviewed study dated 29th of June 2021, a team of Chinese physicists led by Wanwei Han claimed to have developed the world's most powerful superconducting quantum computer. If this report is true, that makes this computer one of the most powerful on Earth, more powerful than Google's earlier Sycamore processor. Quantum computers use properties of quantum physics to store data and process information. And they do this in hours, what would normally take years for a more conventional computer to process. Quantum computers have the potential to design new medicines, crack the most advanced encryption, and open the door to new intelligent machines. On this episode of Fast Thinking, we're asking two questions. First, how revolutionary is this breakthrough? And second, is this a challenge to how nations or companies operate? To answer these questions, I'd like to turn to a good friend and colleague, Dr. Bill Jeffrey, CEO of SRI, as well as an associate at the Atlantic Council's GeoTech Center. Bill, first, on the question of how revolutionary is this breakthrough, can you first tell us, what is a qubit, and do 56 qubits for this new computer differ from the 53 qubits that Google had?
Yeah, so first, thank you for inviting me. I'm pleased to be here. In terms of a qubit, we really want to compare it to sort of a traditional computer, which is binary, where it means it only uses ones or zeros. The beauty of a quantum computer is that it exploits some of the unique properties of quantum physics, particularly superposition and entanglement. And superposition means that instead of a 1 or 0, it can have any combination of that. And so what that means is that it's a much more powerful type of machine, and the number of qubits basically scales exponentially the power of the computer. So a 56 qubit machine is a lot more powerful than a 53 qubit machine. Now, in terms of how revolutionary is this, I think it's important to sort of first put in perspective. This is an impressive accomplishment, and the team should be congratulated that, it's quantum, maintaining control over quantum systems is hard. And they did a really nice job on that. But really keeping in perspective, this is an evolutionary, not a revolutionary advance over what has been demonstrated. When IBM and Google both use similar technology, superconducting qubits, when Google's Sycamore was 53 qubits, that was in 2019. Both IBM and Google have put out a roadmap to demonstrate the scaling of their machines. And both of them claim that by the end of this year, they should be close to 100 qubits. And they expect about a factor of 10 increase every 2 years. So, to put in perspective, if this was a horse race, we're taking a snapshot just as the horses are leaving the gate. So this is really early in this cycle.
And I really appreciate that perspective, Bill. And I think, if anything, this may be the first Atlantic Council episode that really is dealing with both quantum physics as well as the idea of a multiverse. But as we think about the revolutionariness, and like you said, this is a race that's just beginning. Should we only be thinking about U.S. as well as China, or should we also think about other countries? I know, like, for example, Canada has some quantum activities that they're doing as well. Should we look to Europe? Are there other horses in this race that are also occurring to try and advance these breakthroughs?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the first to get a really functioning, applicable quantum computer is going to have a significant advantage economically and potentially national security. So for the economic reasons, a number of countries are putting a lot of resources into this. So Europe has a number of really excellent efforts. Switzerland has some wonderful work, Germany, the UK, Australia's got very, very strong teams as well as Canada, and China, and obviously the United States. So this is a global race. And I said it's really driven as much, at least early on, by the economic impact, as well as longer term, potentially national security impact.
Are there other concerns that we should think about in terms of either national security or how commercial companies operate? Should they start thinking now about quantum resistant algorithms for their encryption, or other activities that companies should do?
Yeah, so first let me talk a little bit about the encryption. I mean, so for the encryption, that is that was one of the main drivers that really got a lot of publicity around quantum computing several years ago, when Shor's algorithm came out, which is essentially a quantum Fourier transform algorithm. That's a fancy phrase, but basically what it did is it outlined a way by which things like RSA encryption could be broken fairly efficiently. Now, to do that is a very, very hard, complex problem, and we're a long way away from being able to do that, well over a decade, if not longer from that. So that's not an immediate concern, but to prepare for that, people are working on basically quantum resistant encryption. And National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is where I used to be a director, is really taking the lead in the United States for helping to develop quantum resistant encryption algorithms. But again, it's an issue, but it's a long way into the future. Nearer term is going to be applications in finance, in materials discovery, in pharmaceuticals, in logistics, and potentially significant improvements in AI. And their national security implications can include, faster operations for the military. And so there are near-term issues that are being looked at there. But the real payoff near to midterm will be economic. Faster material discovery, faster drug discovery, more efficient logistics routings. We're talking about right now putting into place who will be the dominant economic power in the second half of this century. And that's why a lot of countries are heavily investing in making sure that quantum, which is going to be one component of that, is going to be something in their control.
I really appreciate you emphasizing the economic, and like you said, that's really what's at stake in the short term here. I can remember in a past life, back in the 90s on silicon graphics machines, I was doing translation of chemical formulas into what their 3D conformation shapes actually were. And, you had to sit there and let the machine run overnight and you would come back. And the fact that you can now, as we move into this future with more qubits, start to do drug discovery and translate what do those three-dimensional molecules actually look like. I mean, you think about what happened just with COVID-19 and what it took to actually understand, how can we, either take out the spike associated with COVID-19 or actually have a way of actually emulating it to trigger an immune response to actually do the vaccines. We could now do that, once we have a working quantum computer in the years ahead, we will be able to do that much faster in ways like actually, like you said, drug discovery, treatments for both viruses and other types of infections, but also possibly cancer will be huge. The other thing that I think you touched on is that this really is a big stakes game. And it's something that the GeoTech Commission report, the Commission on the Geopolitical Impacts of New Technologies and Data, which we really appreciate all your inputs into, Bill, we emphasize that maybe the United States needs to reach out to partners in Europe, in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, so that it's really a collective activity towards quantum information systems, as opposed to going to go it alone, with the idea that we could actually do this together. I'd be interested in your thoughts about, are we seeing nation states start to think beyond their own borders, or is this still right now every nation for itself?
Yeah, so absolutely. I think that's long-term, that's where we need to go. I'd say at the moment, there's initial discussions of collaborations among allies, but I wouldn't say that it's a very robust and aggressive posture at the moment. So I'm optimistic, though, that as countries put more investment in, I think one of the things that this accomplishment that the Chinese have shown is that they have demonstrated a very firm national commitment that sort of dominating quantum technology is part of a strategic imperative for the Chinese government. They've stated that in documents. They're actually showing it in actual practice by demonstrations like this. I think that should provide a little bit more impetus for the United States and its allies to better coordinate some of their research efforts in quantum technology, both quantum computing and quantum sensing, a slightly broader view of this. And the other aspect of it is, though, it's not the first person who gets a working quantum computer is going to win. There's going to be a lot of winners here. There's a lot of different technologies that are being explored and can be applied. But what you want is not to be left behind. And so the U.S. needs to continue its commitment, and the more that we can work with our allies, this is to everyone's benefit.
Well said. And I think you underscored that this is something that there's going to be multiple benefits, and it's not just one where it's just the single one that gets there. It's actually, like you said, not being left behind. In some respects, this is a new space race, but it's happening in the invisible scale that most of us can't see. Like I said, this is the first AC multiverse episode, but here's the hope that we actually can put the resources together. I guess as one closing question for you, Bill, if you were asked, for example, by either the current U.S. administration, or if you were asked, say, if NATO came and said, what can we do together? What would be your advice for how do we go together faster in this area?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that one of the big aspects of the future, what I'll call quantum economy, is really creating the entire ecosystem around it. It's not just building a single machine. It's developing the algorithms that go with the machines. It's the supply chain that goes with that. It's a robust research effort that goes with that. And right now, we tend to be focused on these little point solutions and not thinking about the entire supply chain, the workforce issues and everything else that goes along with that. So the U.S. Government, for example, put together what's called the Quantum Economic Development Consortium, which is, I think, a really good step in this direction. Full Truth in Advertising, SRI, has taken the lead in managing it, but it's a consortium of both the U.S. government agencies and the private sector in the U.S. to really think through where are the missing gaps in that ecosystem. I think what we need to make sure as going forward is that those components of the ecosystem that have gaps are filled, and that we have a robust structure. And that's also a place where the allies are very important. It doesn't have to be the U.S. having every piece of the ecosystem to make this work. I think it really does need to be more of a global effort, especially with our allies, on making sure that this is robust. And there'll be pluses and minuses in budgets for years. We need to have something that can sort of survive through the normal budget cycles and maintain this aggressive nature. This is a hard problem. It's going to take years to have both robust computing and robust quantum sensing, but we need to start building that capability today.
Well, excellent. I really appreciate you sharing those insights, Bill, and also thank you for everything you're doing as a vanguard leading these activities forward. For everyone who's been listening, thanks for joining us for this episode of AC Fast Thinking. And it's like we always like to say, please be bold, please be brave, please be benevolent for the future ahead. I'll see you next time.